set? Good. All set? You guys hear me? What does this picture look like to you? Is it a dinosaur? Turn your head, you kind of see Italy. Personally, I see one of these toys. You might recognize them from physics class. You know, they dip down, get the water. But in reality, it's none of those things. Instead, it's a congressional district in California. And if it looks weird to you, that's because it is. It's a result of partisan gerrymandering, which, as defined by Vox in their 2015 article, Gerrymandering Explained, is when the drawing of political districts is intentionally used to benefit a particular party. For a better description of gerrymandering, just look at this diagram from the Washington Post's article. This is the best explanation of gerrymandering you will ever see. So in this fictitious state on your left, you'll see we have 60% Democrats in blue and 40% Republicans in red. So there's a way to draw 5 districts in which it's perfectly represented, 3 blue districts and 2 red districts. But there's also a way to draw districts in which you have 5 blue districts and 0 red districts, or 2 blue districts and 3 red districts. These last 2 pictures are not fair and are not proportional to the state as a whole. These last 2 pictures are examples of partisan gerrymandering. Today, I'm going to talk about why we should end partisan gerrymandering in our country. I'm going to look at the problems that it's caused in our political system before moving on to how we can fix it through independent, nonpartisan commissions that create redistricting plans. Finally, I'm going to look at how this would benefit our country and what you personally can do to fix this problem. Let's start with the issues of gerrymandering. As I explained earlier, gerrymandered districts are ones in which one particular party has an advantage over the other. And this leads to non-competitive districts, non-competitive elections. Now, non-competitive elections are a problem because they lead to more extreme representatives. Here's how. In a district that is specifically designed so that one party has an advantage over the other, there's really no chance that a candidate from another party will unseat the representative. Therefore, the representative in Congress really only has to worry about people from his own party who influence the outcome of the election in a greater way than the people from the other party. In Congress, this person won't vote across party lines or in a bipartisan way. Instead, this representative will only vote in a way that appeases his own party, particularly the most extreme people from his party, because they hold a greater influence over the outcome of an election. Unfortunately, the problem of non-competitive districts has only gotten worse. According to a nonpartisan study by the Cook Political Report, The Incredible Shrinking Swing Seat, the number of competitive seats in 1997 was 164. In 2016, that number had fallen to 72. Unfortunately, that problem has also influenced our Congress. As I mentioned earlier, non-competitive races lead to more polarization, and that polarization makes Congress as a whole more polarized. So, if you look at these diagrams from the Public Library of Science's 2015 report, The Rise of Partisanship and Super Cooperators in the U.S. House of Representatives, we see how in 1973 we have a lot of overlap, and the Democrats are blue and the Republicans are red. So Republicans are voting with Democrats and Democrats are voting with Republicans. Not very polarized. In 1989, we have a little bit of overlap, but there's still a lot of separation. It's definitely getting a little more polarized. In 2011, there's almost no interaction. Complete separation between 2 parties. That is what happens when you have more extreme members of Congress and more polarization, excuse me. As I mentioned earlier, these things all have effects, and the effect of a polarized Congress comes in when we see gridlock in our Congress. So if you look at this chart from the Washington Post article, how political polarization creates stalemate and undermines lawmaking, as the level of congressional moderation, the red line, has decreased over the years, we've seen an increase in the blue line, which shows the percentage of major issues that are gridlocked in Congress. Now, gridlock isn't good for anybody because neither party gets what they want, and it just reinforces the problem of polarization because no one wants to break party lines and help anyone out on the other side. In order to end this gridlock that we've seen, we need a fix to gerrymandering, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now. To reverse this trend of gerrymandering and political polarization, we need independent commissions who have no interest in the outcome of the election to decide what redistricting looks like. These commissions would make compact districts that are more competitive so that representatives actually have an incentive to reach across the aisle and look to members of the other party. So before I look into how exactly we go about that, I need to explain how we really get partisan gerrymandering in the first place. Every 10 years in state houses across the country, state legislatures use census data to make a redistricting plan. Now, the party that has the advantage in the state house, maybe the majority or has control of the governor's mansion, is going to be able to exert more influence over how the redistricting plan is formed. That's how you get one party represented more in gerrymandered districts. So there's 3 ways to go about ending gerrymandering. The first one is through the legislature. The legislature could create a law that says that all redistricting plans have to be done by a nonpartisan independent commission. Additionally, the governor of a state could say that they will veto any law that is not nonpartisan and fair. The third way is through the courts. And right now we're seeing how that works because there's a case in the Supreme Court right now, Gill versus Whitford, that is deciding the future of nonpartisan gerrymandering and whether it's constitutional. Luckily, although that court case hasn't been decided yet, it probably will be in the next year or so, we can see how ending gerrymandering could influence our country. In 2010, California passed a law stating that all redistricting plans had to be done by a nonpartisan commission. So we went from districts that look like this. Remember this guy? To districts that look like this. That's the same district after the law was passed. And you'll see it's more compact and it's not drawn in a crazy way. This leads to more fair districts. The results were pretty immediate. If you look at this chart from the Federal Election Commission, in 2012, the first year in which this law was implemented, we see that the percentage of districts in California that are considered competitive or toss-ups tripled. Now, in a competitive district, as I explained, we can have more moderation going across the aisle. And if we can have this across the country, we'll see a snowballing effect. Because we'll see more moderate representatives in Congress who will act in more bipartisan ways. And this will give more influence to the bipartisan and the moderate people in Congress, and less influence to the extreme, ideologically polarizing members of Congress. Hopefully, this will lead to less gridlock in our Congress. So, I know that in a lot of social issues, it seems like we're far off, or that nothing that you really can do is helpful. But I want to tell you today that that's not true. Because there is something they can do, and we're making progress. So the most important thing that you can do is vote. Because the people who create partisan gerrymandering plans bet on the fact that there's going to be low turnout, and that the people that are going to turn out for voting are the most ideologically extreme voters who are going to put their candidates back in office. If you guys vote, if all the moderates in a district vote, gerrymandering won't matter. We'll get a candidate who is bipartisan, who will not just listen to the far range of our political discourse. And although voting is important, it matters who you vote for. So vote for candidates who have made nonpartisan redistricting reform a priority. And there are candidates out there. But if you look in your election for Congress or for senator, governor, even president, and you can't find them, then make candidates who will do that. Go to town halls, write editorials. Tell them that your vote depends on whether a candidate will make this a major issue, whether they'll introduce laws in their state house to end partisan redistricting reform. I know it seems like your vote doesn't matter, but it does. I've worked on campaigns and I've seen it. It's really the only thing that they care about, whether you're going to vote for them or not. So use that to your advantage. And we have leverage with this issue with our votes, but we also have momentum. Just a couple weeks ago, Virginia elected a governor, Ralph Northam, that has said that he will veto any redistricting plan that is not nonpartisan and fair. So we're working towards this, and if we can continue doing so, use our leverage and our momentum, we can make partisan gerrymandering a thing of the past. Thank you guys.